This lecture introduces the topic of Christianity in architecture and some of the ideas that will be discussed. The contents will be covered in two parts. Part 1 will be talking about the early Christian period. Part 2 will be talking about the Eastern and Western Roman empires. The early Christian period, Judaism to Christianity, from creation to the year 1. In this map you can see the empire of Alexander the Great, where you can trace his territorial conquests and cultural influences in a chronological order. Between the natives and the conqueror, their belief systems are usually much different, especially pertaining to the understanding of the divine. The Greeks had many gods. Every physis had a patron god. The gods were important to maintain the country, and everyone participates so that the gods will bless them. Usually the ritual is a sacrifice by fire, where everyone will join in so that the gods will be happy. The Greeks and Romans worshipped all the gods combined, and their king represents the gods. The Israelites were very different. They had an exclusive understanding and relation to God, and they see themselves as a people created and chosen by God to be His own people. They believe in a singular, omnipotent, omnipresent God who intervenes in human history. This belief is very different from the surrounding peoples. They believe they were children of God, their land was given by God, and God sent messages to them via scriptures, and there is a singular God. It is a non-mythological approach where God created man and acts continuously. It is not about philosophy. The temple in Jerusalem is the ritual center of the land and worship. The first temple was dedicated in 960 BC by King Solomon and destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BC. The second temple was dedicated in 516 BC and destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. Architecture frames and facilitates the presence of the divine amongst His people. It protects and separates them from the holiness of God. And the ritual calendar orders the interactions with God. It is a walled compound with a single entrance, where the spaces then progresses from public to sacred. Early architecture in Israel was similar to the region. Buildings were dressed in finely carved stone. There were timber frame roofs, rubble, and plaster, and there were use of barrel vaults. The first layer of Greek cultural influence came through the conquest by Alexander the Great in 330 BC, and the second layer of Roman cultural influence came after the conquest by Pompey in 63 BC. This combined to form a Greco-Roman influence, mainly on city planning and architecture, while the provinces retained their own local, vernacular traditions. From 3rd century BC, the Greco-Roman building typology developed with the introduction of Greco-Roman building techniques and materials into Israel. In 63 AD, the land of Judea, the Holy Land, becomes a province of Rome. The center of Jewish religious and cultural life, Jerusalem, came under Roman control and influence. This gave rise to a problem. The Jews wouldn't worship the Roman gods, so they were killed, and they suffered for their refusal to give up their faith. Finally, the temple in Jerusalem, the center of their religious life, was destroyed in 70 AD. In the middle of this, a child was born, a miraculous conception, which was accompanied by signs that the baby was someone extraordinary. This points to the Jewish prophecies about a promised king who will lead and rescue Israel. The Romans were worried, and this child became a threat to the empire. Christianity and Judaism were fundamentally different from Roman religion. Where Rome had many gods and goddesses, and worshipped the emperor himself as a god, the Jews and Christians were monotheists, believing in one singular god to be worshipped alone. Romans were pantheists, worshipping many gods. The Jews and Christians' refusal to worship the Roman gods and emperor led to conflict. The arrival of a radical teacher who promised a new kingdom and was rapidly attracting followers made the Romans and Jewish authorities worried. The threat of political destabilization was a constant concern in the politically volatile province of Judea.